All right, good evening. I'd like to call the...
Hi, kids.
I'd like to call the February 6, 2018 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. Can we all please stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, I'm tempted to ask for a moment of silence in grieving the Patriots' loss to the Eagles, but I think we can kind of move past that one. I don't have any announcements. Is there anyone here for anything that is not currently listed on our agenda? Seeing as no, I'm going to move into our first agenda item, which would be recognition of public safety officials.
Mr. Chairman, by previous agreement, we'll start with the Chief of Police, Nick Miglianico, who will give us some context. We expect to hear from Chief Vincent shortly thereafter.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
So Fire Chief and I wanted to come here tonight to recognize some absolutely outstanding work that people from our department did for Mrs. Gervais here. I'll give you a brief synopsis of what happened, and then Mrs. Gervais can speak on it, and Chief Vincent can cover some things as well. So on December 18th, just after 6 p.m., dispatcher Alex Johnson received a frantic 911 call from a young lady who indicated that her mother was not breathing and unresponsive. Dispatcher Johnson immediately sent Sergeant Gilbert and Officer Bremer to the home, and when they got there, they found that Mrs. Gervais was in cardiac arrest. While the officers were en route to the house, Dispatcher Johnson coached Mr. Gervais through CPR and mouth to mouth, so he was able to do that before the officers got there. The officers, upon arrival, gave her CPR, and they also used our AED, and the AED advised them to give her a shock, which they did. They continued to do CPR until EMS arrived and provided advanced life support to her as well. Chief? Remember all that?
No. All I can say is I can't give enough of a kudos to the police department for getting on it as quick as they can. From my people, the people that answered the call, I think they were there within 4 minutes or so. And I've been told that they had one shock in with Mrs. Gervais when they arrived, and they used the monitors. We talked about the importance of cardiac monitors not too long ago. We have new ones, but they were able to shock her. And this is the importance. Last year when I came to you gentlemen, I talked about the importance of 24/7 coverage. And if you remember when we talked about the manpower study used the Eisenberg model. And the Eisenberg model is worst case scenario of cardiac arrest, and that was what was the case with Mrs. Gervais. We implored you folks, we almost begged you to put people on 24/7 so we could adequately protect and cover the town of Douglas. Because of that, and because of staffing and being in the station 24/7, we were able to slash we talked about being able to be on scene within 8 minutes and 59 seconds, 90% of the time. We are shattering those numbers now, just having help in the station 24/7. So I think the situation sort of speaks for itself. Sometimes when you're talking statistics and you're talking about cardiac arrest, how often does that happen? Well, guess what? It happens once is too many. And when you can get people on the scene that are trained there and do the necessary CPR, the shocking that needs to take place, you give a person a chance to go home and see their family again. So I'm a little moved to see Mrs. Gervais walk into the fire station, and, you know, it's probably one of the happiest days of my life in my career. And I can't say enough about the staff from the Douglas Fire Department and from the Police Department, and, you know, we can recognize them by name as they get their certificates, but
I can tell you, I listened to the call, and it'll give you goosebumps. You know, the dispatcher takes the call. A lot of times people think dispatching is, okay, someone calls and you send the police or fire there and they hang up the phone and that's it. I mean, you have a dispatcher who's on the phone with a frantic caller, giving CPR instructions, walking them through CPR. The other phone is ringing off the hook. They're the only person in the station. They're dispatching fire, police, getting everybody there. It was just a perfect scenario and a perfect ending. Everything worked out well, and it was due to their training and everything that they do.
And I would like to say, before we recognize the ones from the fire and police, there is one other gentleman I'd like to call upon, and that is Mr. Hutnack. He, the day after the blizzard, we got a call about, what was it, about 10 o'clock in the morning?
Just about.
About 10 o'clock in the morning. And Mr. Hutnack was out trying to start his John Deere tractor to plow his driveway, and started having chest pain. And I'll leave the rest to him, if he wants to come up and say a few words, or... Come on right up. You take my chair.
Not a problem. Not a problem. I was feeling pretty bad, and my wife had sense enough to call 911. Normally I'd have said, don't worry about it, but I didn't argue with her. 5 minutes they were there at the house. 20 minutes we were on 146, and less than an hour and a half after it, got to me. I was the proud owner of a stent. Just that quick. Everything that could have gone right that day went doubly right. And, you know, whoever decided that we should have 24/7 coverage needs the biggest pat on the back. You can't get enough comment out of me, because I'm here today because of it. It was so quick, and I was there so extremely organized and fast. I was sent home in 36 hours with basically, the doctor said no heart damage, and it was 100% blockage. So you figure, whatever they did extremely right, and I can't say enough for them. Just everything about it. You know, you got guys riding in the back of the ambulance trying to get a line in your arm while the truck is moving. They did it, and again, thank you. Enough is enough.
Mrs.
don't
Gervais, is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'd also like to say, like to praise everyone from the dispatcher giving the instructions to the police getting their suit, and you were doing everything you could and having the right equipment and everything, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't quick response and everything was done right.
So, before we get into that, I have to say that obviously I couldn't be more pleased with the responses, and very thankful that we have 2 citizens that are still with us because of a decision that this board made a little over a year ago. And I have to say that in my time serving as a selectman, I'd say that moving to 24-hour ambulance coverage in the station is the single best decision that I think that this board has ever made. And I couldn't be more pleased with the departments that are supporting both our police and fire, and obviously these 2 citizens that are sitting in front of us because of what you guys do every day. So thank you guys both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for me anyways.
you don't mind, I have some letters of commendation and some plaques for the police officers, and I know Rep. McKenna and Senator Fatman are here also. I know the board had put together some certificates for them as well, and Chief Vincent has some items for his people as well. We'd like to issue those, call them up and issue those to them if you don't mind.
Absolutely, that was my plan. I think it would make sense for the board. I think each and every one of us want to shake these guys' hands and tell them, job well done.
Alex, could you come up, please?
Yeah, we should.
What's that?
Have a receiving line.
Officer Brimmer? Sergeant Gilbert.
Thank you very much.
Deputy Chief John Furno. We have life-saving bars that have been ordered for these guys. They haven't come in yet.
Good job. Thank you for everything.
Lieutenant Paramedic John Coyne. EMT firefighter Nick Daly. And also firefighter EMT Jack Vincent. Also want to honorably mention John Fitzpatrick and Danica McCallum, who also went on the engine and assisted with this call.
So, and actually, Alex Johnson, I got your certificate from the Board of Selectmen up here too. That's all we got.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm gonna actually turn it over to our state senator and state rep.
Thank you. It's really great to be here. Senator Fatman and I often get the opportunity to be in a room with so many police and firefighters in a room, and it's always humbling. Unfortunately, it's usually at some memorial service or a funeral. And I tell you what, it's a hell of a lot better when it's at a reason to be proud. And it's because we saved a life, not because we're remembering a life that was lost. So we really enjoy the opportunities to come out and thank you and congratulate you for the service that you do. I know some people have heard me say, but the favorite part of my job is recognizing those in the district who do great things. And this is a perfect example of that. When you have the tools and the training and execute that to perfection to save a life, especially around the holidays, that's truly a wonderful thing. So we're just humbled and proud to call you constituents and recognize the great work that you do.
And just to build upon what Joe said, I come in here and I see you guys in blue and in white, and I just get goosebumps because I know every day that you're putting your life on the line, saving people's lives. And as a guy who has a young family, that means the world to me. And I know it means the world to these two people who came up and testified whose lives you did save. And right around Christmas, the time where we all want to be with our families and love one another and just not worry about anything in the world. And you guys made sure that season was joyful for these people. And that is just something that you can't put a price on that. So thank you. And lastly, while everybody who was involved was incredibly important, my goosebumps continued when I saw Nick, because I remember going to his Eagle Scout ceremony. Joe and I were just recalling it, and we said, Nick is going to do good things in his life. And so that is just one manifestation, one person that is a great representative of all of what you do. So thank you. One of my favorite quotes, you might need help over there. One of my favorite quotes is by Winston Churchill. He had a great line, and he said, what one gets is how you make a living. What one gives is how you make a life. And these guys in the back and right here, and gals, you make a life every day trying to make other people's lives better. So thank you for it.
It kind of makes me want to give these guys stuff like every week, just to see like this many people in a selectmen's meeting. Overall, like above and beyond just the guys that were and ladies that were recognized this evening. So I personally want to thank each and every one of you guys for what you do every single day. It takes very special people that put on a uniform and decide that they're going to go out and protect and serve and save lives, and it's not something that everybody does. And, in my mind, every one of you guys are true heroes every day. So thank you.
Very proud to live in this town. Very proud to be a part of the town and town government. And the gentlemen and ladies along the back wall and sitting down in the white, you're a large reason of that, or a large part of that. Thank you very much.
Okay. Is there anybody else that has
Not a whole lot more to say, except thank you.
No?
Thumbs up.
It's humbling. All right, so, which brings us on to item number...
Mr. Chairman, should we recess for 5 minutes or so? I can't imagine everyone's going to want to stay for...
No, I think a lot of them are here for the next item.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, say no more.
All right. We can recess after that. How's that? We can take a 5-minute after item 2. Item number 2 is to ratify the lieutenant contract.
Mr. Chairman, the town has settled a contract with a police lieutenant. The decision to promote from within was made by the chief, and therefore I would like the chief to tell the story.
Thank you, Mr. Wojcik. Mr. Chairman, I want to ask you to promote David Brown, to my right here, to the position of lieutenant. Dave's been a member of the police department for over 31 years. He started off as a dispatcher in 1986, and he quickly moved his way up to full-time officer. Dave graduated #1 in his police academy class and was promoted to sergeant in 1996. In 2008, he became the department's first full-time detective sergeant, and he's been working in that role for the past 10 years. I have great confidence in Dave and his abilities, and I know he'll serve me and the department well, and I respectfully ask that you promote him to the position of lieutenant.
Do I hear a motion?
I move that we promote David Brown to the position of lieutenant in the Douglas Police Department.
I second that motion.
So it was made by Dave and seconded by Mike, almost seconded by Tim. Is there any further discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Great choice.
Every meeting was like this.
So do I.
Were you on wait? Yeah.
Chief, do you want
Wait.
us up there?
You guys are getting up.
I think she's going to swear him in first, and then I'll make the rounds.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, please state your name,
I, David Brown,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will perform my duties
that I will perform my duties
as lieutenant for the Douglas Police Department.
as lieutenant for the Douglas Police Department.
As lieutenant,
As lieutenant,
I will uphold and obey
I will uphold and obey
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
the bylaws of the town of Douglas,
the bylaws of the town of Douglas,
the rules, regulations,
the rules, regulations,
policies and procedures
policies and procedures
of the Douglas Police Department
of the Douglas Police
in
Department
a professional manner.
in a professional manner.
So help me God.
So,
Congratulations.
Hold on, recreate that.
Now I propose we take a 5-minute recess. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Our,
We can do that. Just waiting on Cortez. We're good.
Mr. Cortez?
I'll tell you the rest of it later.
Oh, Harvey.
All right. So should we just do that now?
We're back.
Yeah, we're back. Suzanne?
sure.
So,
Did we approve the contract?
No, we didn't.
we didn't, so you think we may want to do that?
Amidst
I
the
would think
pomp
we
and
would.
circumstance of 5 minutes
Yes.
ago, we
We
failed
were
to ratify
overwhelmed.
the lieutenant's contract, so I would like to make a motion that we ratify that.
I would second that.
Made by Tim, seconded by Dave. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Is it 7:15 or past?
It is.
All right. So we have the hearing for poll petition number 254-85404. So I'd be looking for a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
You have to read the document.
I'm gonna get to that.
I actually gave you instructions.
Did you? You was forgetting though.
I forget everything. All right. So I have to read this, right?
And you were actually saying these two.
This one? All right, so the Massachusetts Electric Company and Verizon New England Incorporated are requesting permission to erect and maintain poles and wires to be placed thereon together with such sustaining and protecting fixtures as said companies deem necessary to be owned and used in common by your petitioners in the following public ways. Vine Street. National Grid is to install a new JO pole number 38-50, an anchor at staked location, pole to be used to start pole line extension down Catherine Way to service the two houses that are being built.
Excuse me.
Come on up.
That's Josh.
Welcome, Josh.
Hello, Josh.
Pretty hard to follow up after that. I'm Josh Stabor, electrical engineer at National Grid. And so the reason for this in the description is we're putting in a pole between pole 38 and 39 because they're building two houses on Catherine Way. So we need a pole and an anchor to start the extension down the driveway.
Okay. And I see the highway and the tree warden have no issues with this, nor does the police department.
Right. And it's not a conservation issue either.
All right. So I would be looking for a motion to,
Are there any abutters here, or do you want to?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, they've all been notified, but there are no abutters here.
Thank you, Suzanne.
So I'll move that we close the public hearing.
One second.
do we want to vote on it before we close it?
No.
No? All right. Made by Mike, seconded by Tim. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Then I move that we approve the petition as presented.
Second.
Made by Mike, seconded by Dave. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All set. Thank you.
Outstanding job, Josh.
Thank you.
Anybody want to give him a standing ovation or anything? Or I think we should clap after everybody leaves on this one.
Guys, have a wonderful night.
You too, take care.
Okay, so item number 4 is to approve a junk dealer's license for Tanya's Treasures.
In your
Come up
packet
and
is
have
an
a seat, Tanya.
application for a junk dealer license. Basically, it's for selling secondhand articles, which is what she will be doing. Unfortunately, it has that name, but what can we do?
I've actually gone in and looked at the store. It's not junk.
Yeah.
So,
The shop is at 320 Main Street, which was formerly the flower shop downtown. Her application is complete. She is aware this application, or the license expires on May 1st. And again, once the board, it's the board that approves the license, but it's the town clerk that signs it.
okay. I don't think anybody has any.
No,
any
I think
questions.
it's a good opportunity to share your story, though. First time in the treasure market.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
it is.
They give you credit for venturing out there and making it happen.
Well, thank you. I
Congratulations.
appreciate that. Thank you.
So Tanya is actually a fixture here. She manages the extra
Yeah, oh,
mile.
sure,
Yes.
absolutely.
All right, so do
Right
I,
across the street, right?
yeah. So do I hear a motion to approve said license?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Will a coin toss?
Bruce.
Thank you.
Made by Dave, seconded by Mike. Is there any further discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
You're all
Thank
set.
Good luck with it.
Congratulations,
Congrats.
Tanya.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Tanya, do you want me to mail you the license, or do you want to come in and pick it up? I have to have the clerk sign it tomorrow, so.
I can pick it up.
All right, I'll let you know when.
Okay, thank you very much.
Have a good night, Tanya.
Thank you.
Oh, surprising. Item number 5, snow and ice deficit spending.
One of the only accounts, if not the only account, that the town can deficit spend is snow and ice. We were budgeted this year at $135,000. It was some time ago, almost a month ago, we authorized overspending that amount by an additional $65,000 to bring the total up to $200,000. As we sit here this evening, we are on the cusp of that boundary as well. It's not necessarily about the size of the storms, it's about the nature of the storms. So freezing rain and sleet is actually much worse for our snow and ice budget than a prolonged snowstorm could ever be. So that's the nature of the events we're having this year, so we're gonna be, as of this week, right around 200,000. This 31D is notice to the board. The requirement is that the town administrator and the finance committee approve it, and it'll go to town meeting to be balanced out at the end of the process. So that's where we stand right now. Pray for sunshine. 'Cause even
After
today,
tomorrow, right.
now, who expected that snowfall today to amount to anything? It wasn't predicted, it wasn't supposed to be much more than a passing flurry. It covered the street, we had to send out salt and sand
Right.
for certain key locations. So folks know the economics, but every time you see a salt and sand truck go by your house, it's $9,000 to cover the whole town one run. So it goes away, it burns up quickly. We've had storms where the men have been out 8 or 9 times, just because
It sounds like tomorrow's is gonna be that.
tomorrow's a pain in the neck.
Yep.
It truly is.
Can we pick the entire town up and move it south? Think of the funds we'd save.
Can we-
Except that then you get the coastal storms that you didn't get.
Can we put out a hit on that groundhog? I mean, yeah.
That's a good idea.
Make that
All right,
happen.
so this is just informational, no action needed by us, because
That's
it's all
correct.
on you and FinCom. All right, which brings us to item number 6, which is the education reimbursement for the fire chief.
Mr. Chairman, our contracted employees and all of our employees, frankly, under the personnel bylaw, are permitted to pursue education relevant to their service to the town on a reimbursement basis. It requires advance notice to the board and approval by the board and subsequent reimbursement after the student passes the class. When Chief Vincent enrolled in these classes, he was in the process of negotiating his contract with the interim town administrator, Mr. Purcell. And somehow wires got crossed and notice wasn't provided. That is not going to abrogate the employee's ability to get reimbursed. All that Attorney Mazur requested that you do, and his opinion is here in your packet, is waive the requirement and go ahead and approve the reimbursement, and the town accountant will have sufficient authority to issue the check.
I move that we waive the requirement and approve the chief's educational reimbursement.
Second.
It was made by Mike, seconded, made by Dave, seconded by Mike. Is there any further discussion on this?
Just a question, this is, we're waiving it for this particular instance?
Yes.
Only for this instance, and the chief's aware of the process, and we're all set going forward. Everybody is.
All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you, chief.
Thanks, chief. Was it a good class? Yeah?
Absolutely.
All right, so item number 7 is the Mass Opioid Litigation Attorneys Consortium. with possible votes.
Mr. Chairman, by way of summary, I'm requesting the board's permission to commit the town to be part of this litigation. The exact nature of this case, it's called a mass tort. It is not a class action. It is a series of tort cases that are being consolidated for purposes of gathering evidence. The travel is likely there will be some initial trials, and based upon the course of those trials, it's likely that there'll either be termination of the action or settlement or decision to proceed on the cases one by one through the court system. The major law firms that have brought this action have believe that the strategy here for the municipalities is to join this lawsuit and work together to document what is basically regional phenomenon of cases crossing town lines because this is such a widespread epidemic. And of course the theory here is your classic pharmaceutical product liability theory, that the producers of these drugs either knew or should have known of the adverse effects of the application to the drugs, the specific circumstances for which they were prescribed, and damages would issue if that liability were found. The nature of the case is that it is a contingency case. The town does not have to pay expenses for representation unless the litigation is successful or there is a settlement. I think all of the town managers in Worcester County, we talk regularly, we've had lunch to discuss this. None of us is particularly thrilled to recommend to our boards a 25% contingency plus a 25% expense roll-up, so that the maximum the town would, it's not really the maximum, but the town could receive as little as 50 cents on the dollar, and not much more than, certainly not 75 cents on the dollar. But having said that, we don't have the resources to try a case like this on our own.
No.
And past litigation of this nature has benefited the town. So the town was part of a settlement for the MTBE liability litigation. So it is being perceived by my colleagues, and I certainly perceive it as sort of a cost-free opportunity to recoup some of the costs the town does incur. We've had one overdose death that I'm aware of for sure in town, and then this past week we had another incident that tied up all of our resources to service the needs of that person, both, all the cruisers that were on duty at that time and an ambulance. So we're very much a small town, but we're involved in the life of the nation, and this is the epidemic that's sweeping the country. And there's some hope that the settlement funds, if they were to be achieved, could be used to offset our costs of adoption, of coping with this. So there's an agreement here that more or less summarizes in some very fancy legal language what I just put out there. We ran this by town council, and Mr. Bowen wrote the following in the inimitable fashion of Mr. Bowen. I've been reviewing the opioid litigation, have spoken to Mr. Sandman, who is lead counsel, in another connection as a contingent fee project. This might be worthwhile. So that is the opinion of local council.
Okay. I think it would make sense to just move forward with it. There's no harm, no foul on our side.
No harm, no foul. I echo the town administrator's concerns about essentially, I know it's mass tort, 50% contingency fee.
Is there a time frame in which we have to decide this, in the sense that would the next best thing come up in a month that might be 40 or 25%?
Well, there's more than one question there. I don't think we're under time pressure to sign. I don't think a better deal is going to come through. They've cleaned up with the clients. There's a long list of towns that have already joined. And
I would echo that, and I didn't mean to infer that somebody else would come along with a better deal. Professionally, I'm uncomfortable with that high of a fee, that's all. But I don't believe that there's another option for us to recover, and I do believe it's essentially risk-free for the town. We have no money in the game.
Yeah, well, we're in the red, so it's a play to get out of it. Sure.
hear a motion?
Sure. I lost track of my packet, but I'll make a motion that we enter into the mass opioid litigation, mass tort effort, and to authorize our Matt to enter into the agreement on our behalf, or the town's behalf.
Second.
Made by Tim, seconded by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. This brings us to the minutes for the January 16, 2018 meeting.
Make a motion that we approve the January 16th meeting minutes.
Second.
Made by Tim, seconded by Dave. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. This brings us to your report, Mr. Wojcik.
Mr. Chairman, in your packet, there is correspondence from National Grid indicating that we have been assigned a regional contact person, a Mr. Robert Moran, who has already been by to visit. The contents of the board's letter to National Grid were reviewed with Mr. Moran, and we expect some response, but the principal point of that letter was to ask that somebody be assigned to us, so now we do have a contact person, a live body that we can reach out to. In the course of our conversation, I think he was empathetic to the town's position and took our feedback on their performance in the October storm seriously, and I expect a response on the merits of that conversation. But that all news is good news when Grid is actually going to reach out and try to help us. The status of our budget documentation, we're pretty much ready to go. I'm just making sure my last set of spreadsheets foots to the penny, because I'm funny like that. We've gotten some interesting news this past week. We can confirm that our health insurance renewal was issued at 5.9% increase premium year over year, which is pretty good news, given that the town has experienced double-digit inflation in health insurance costs in the past couple of years. The property and casualty renewal is also in. It is up slightly more than that. It's more like a 10.9% increase. That is a reflection of the town's recent claim history. Our health insurance loss ratio is 75%, which is outrageously low. Our loss ratio for property and casualty is 132%. So we really have, for the last 3 years, gotten a pretty good deal. If we'd paid those claims ourselves, we would have paid 32% more than we paid in premium. So we are going to see that increase. The news isn't as bad as it sounds, because in formulating the budget, we had anticipated a fairly substantial increase. So while the dollar amount is higher than we had in a preliminary budget, it's not a whole lot higher. So it wasn't a shock to what we had already decided to plan for. The remainder of what's left, we just have to come up with an action plan internally between the finance director and I for the information technology services component. And once that is complete, I'll distribute to the board a scenario-based forecasting tool where you'll be able to change some of the variables and see what the impact is as previously described to you. I think in terms of public updates, that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So this brings us to old business or new business. Nothing. And I would be looking for one of Tim's eloquent
I was
motions.
just gonna say that.
Do you want to do it, Dave?
I don't think I'm up to it tonight. I defer to the senior.
Mike?
Sure. I'd like to
Oh,
hear
you called my bluff.
I'd like to hear a motion to enter into executive session for the purposes of contract negotiations, real property, possible litigation, and a personnel matter, and to leave executive session for the purposes of adjournment.
I would second that very eloquent motion.
It was very well made by Mike, seconded by Dave. Roll call vote, right?
Mike Hughes, aye.
Tim Bone and I.
Kevin Morris, aye.
Dave Cortez, aye.